So if we were to try still to make, the discussion we are having a bit more concrete, and if we take, for example, change management and just start to try to define what do you mean with change management? Can you try to define it in a concise way to make people perhaps outside your business understand what that is all about?
The short version is that it's the people side of a change. A product manager can handle the technical side of a change, and a technical side it doesn't have to be about computers or technology. That could also be designing a new organization to actually say, okay, these are the roles we need and these are the skills we need for each role. Change management is about having the people affected by this to actually embrace, adopt, and use that the solution that the technical side brings.
I think actually you mentioned in the beginning a good example of what the need is for this and what is the problem you're trying to solve. In one way you said these kind of ERP systems you try to sell, I guess, and in some way you thought it was an amazing system and it should make everyone happy, but in reality it did not, right? And that is the problem of change, that I guess that some people, or is that really the point? And even if you have a great project or product or service that you want to sell, that perhaps people don't really want to adapt to it or change in the traditional way they work. Is that really what you try to solve? Or
I mean, it's in the end, it's about, do people want to change? Do they see a benefit? Do they want to get on the ride? Do they want to do this? And it's the same problem like with any invention. You can have the best product, exactly, but if nobody knows about it or buys it, you won't make a success. I'm sure throughout history there have been so many excellent innovations that never happened. And in organizations, if we talk about within organizations, somebody has spent a lot of time saying, okay, we don't work in the best way within the company. We need to change that. So we get some system support to change the way we work, and they set up requirements, and they have been really thinking hard about it and choose between solutions and decide. And they have spent a lot of time and really understand, why do we need this? Why is this best solution? And usually what happens is that it's announced to people, okay, we now have this system, and then you train people to use it. And actually the person at the desk, it's sort of just landed in their knee as, okay, why is there a problem? I don't understand. Why is there a problem?
I've been working the same way. It was fine for me for the last 10 years. Why do I need to change to this stupid system process?
Yeah, and for somebody that doesn't have the full view and hasn't spent as much time, I usually get told that people, they just don't want to. Well, have you actually walked in their shoes to try to understand what do they see from their point of view? Because you see the full picture. What do they see when they look at it? So, just go to yourselves. Nobody wants to get told to do something. Yeah. I say, why?
I mean, perhaps this is a good segue to the book as well. And we actually started speaking a bit about that in the beginning. And why can you perhaps start speaking a bit more about, why did you start working with this book? What is the need you're trying to help with the book that you wrote?
To get an understanding that there is nothing wrong with project management, but it needs some add-ons. And
so it's not sufficient with project management. It needs something else. Is that what you're saying?
If what you're implementing requires people to change behaviors or ways of working, then it won't be. And then how much change management you need depends on what kind of change and what are people's thoughts about the change. But what we wanted to do by writing the book was to really look from a Swedish perspective. I mean, the size of the companies we have here, the culture that we have here. How can we make sure that we start sending people out of universities with the knowledge of change management? Because it's not just about having good change managers. You also need people in an organization asking for change management, for leaders to say, yes, we are going to do this. We need project management and we need change management to put that in.
And the book is called Förändringsledning, is that correct?
Yeah.
And
change management.
It's being translated to English right now, right?
Yeah.
And that the name of the English version will be what? Have you defined that?
Yes, change management.
Really? Oh, that's simple.
So why make it? Why make it difficult?
Okay, so perhaps then one additional question, and perhaps just to make it a bit more easy to understand for people like me as well, if we were to find some concrete example that we can talk around, perhaps something you brought up in a book, or taking something like, I know my mother, for example, she was forced into a digitalized journal system, working as a nurse. And that was a horrible experience for her, and she hated every minute of it. And probably because the product at that time was really bad. But still, do you have a good example that we can speak around so we can understand the differences between product management and change management in some good way?
We can take a small example from a municipality. I have that in the book. What they were going to do was to digitalize all the paperwork needing for the public meetings. So I mean that's regulated in law. You need to send out all the documents for a meeting a certain amount of days before the meeting. Everybody needs to bring them, and a lot of photocopying. And what they wanted to do was to digitalize it. So everybody would have an iPad with an app, and all the documents would be pushed to that app. Right. So, I mean, then they could be, you didn't need to copy it, it didn't get lost in the mail, and nobody would forget it when they came to the meeting. In the municipalities, the steering, they are politicians on their free time, which means that they had other work during the daytime, and the ages reached from 20 years to 82.
Ooh, that's
so if it was a project, it would have been, okay, we need iPads. We will write a manual on how to create an Apple ID, how to download the app and how to use the app. And then we will bring in the suppliers and we will book training so people can use it, and then we go.
And that should work for 82-year-olds as well at that point. Yes. Okay. The chairman was very visionary, and also the IT department said, okay, maybe we should do this in a different way because we might have some problems. And we had been working with them in other projects before that. So we took another approach to say, okay, what do we need to do in terms, how do we bring everybody on board? We don't want to bore the 20 years old and tell them how to create an Apple ID. And the 82-year-olds, well, they might have grandchildren, but we can't just assume that they will know it. So the first thing was to bring on the IT department and say, okay, we're going to do this a bit differently. We are going to ask you to work in the evenings because that's when they have their meetings. That's when people can do this. And for you to actually be support and walk around in the room and support people. And we got them on board. So we'd never done anything like it, and I don't think people will learn, but okay, we'll do this. So we started before their meetings. Those that wanted help could come there and create it. And also the chairman, we had 15 minutes in the beginning of the first meeting where he's told everybody, why are we doing this? Why is this important? Why are we going away from the papers, moving into iPads? And we understand that for some of you, this is going to be challenging, but we have support. And these guys are here to support you. And the first phase was just create your Apple ID. And then the next meeting a month later is download the app. And that was then the training with the supplier. We had 1 hour at the beginning of their meeting. Had never happened before that you could do that kind of stuff in those official meetings. And then the third time, those that wanted could actually use that one instead of the papers. So they could read, take notes, and just use the iPad. And at the beginning of that meeting, we talked about, okay, have you all been able to open the app? Are there any problems? Guys from IT, they are here, and they walked around during the whole meeting, so around the table helping people. And then the fourth time, it was only digital. And the people at the administration say, it's never going to work, just go like that. So they were in the back with a lot of stacks of paper.
And it actually worked. And afterwards, the IT guy said, when you told us about doing it this way and involving people and adapting it to all and involving the chairman to speak about it and take time out of their meetings, we thought you were crazy, but okay, let's try. And said, we have never had a project go this smooth. And it took so much less time that we had calculated. So had it been a project, it would have been rolled out and it would have been delivered, but it probably wouldn't have worked.
But let me summarize from another angle now, because I think this around change management boils down to how do you define a metric of a successful implementation, operationalizing AI or a project. And typically what me and Anna found early is that even all the way back.
People should maybe know that you have worked together.
Well, we have worked together.
Yes.
Actually, we worked. I worked in Uppnet Merkantil and we worked at the same time there, but not really close. But then we work a little bit closer in pro sales, but on other projects. But how should I put it? I share your journey. I share your understanding of the journey and what I do today. And the way we have talked about this is a little bit like, how do you define success of an AI project or any systems project? Is it that you have implemented a system? Is it that you have done the training? Or is it the metric of adoption and people are working in a new way? And for me, change management is a little bit like, when I go in, I can spend, I have 10 million in budget. Do I spend all 10 million on pure technology? Probably not going to work. I need to spend a little bit of money on project management, to organize the technicalities of how I build topics. And then Anna says, and I say, actually, have you thought about making adoption your metric? And do you have a strategic design for how you're going to drive change? So as if you're it's like amazing, right? We spend 1 billion for a system change and we have professional stuff, how we work with the system part. And then all of a sudden we stop. It's like doing a marathon and stopping, 5 kilometers out from the goal and say, I'm not going to plan and I'm not going to orchestrate the last kilometers. I'm just going to take that. I'm going to roll with that on a hunch.
Would you agree with that, Anna?
Yes, definitely. And your question about the difference between project and change management. Project management, it has a set of ways of working. It's very well defined with roles and the goals you have. And the project, when you close the project, that's when the solution is delivered and accepted. Change management goes on because change management is about actually when you started a project, you wanted some return on investment. Yes. So change management is really bringing home that return on investment. So that could go, and then the question is, okay, for how long? And it's okay, so how long is a rope? Because the speed of adoption will depend a lot of how well prepared was it. Change management is often brought in a couple of months after the project has been closed because they didn't get the return on investment and we need to change people. But if you have it from the beginning, then you get that earlier.
But let me give an example then from a tech point of view as well. And I'm not, let's say a company I worked for in the past and we had this kind of discussion about we want to change a part of a product, some kind of service. And let's just for sake of argument say it was about the color of some button. It was not, but still, it's some kind of change in how a product worked. And then we had a choice of either doing the data-driven A/B testing kind of thing and trying to see what really does work and what will make users more happy. And then you have a more experienced senior product owners that know and have a lot of experience in traditionally these kind of changes will work or not work. And I know from that time it was a lot of heated discussion about why the data-driven A/B test did not show the true value, and it was measured wrongly or the data wasn't collected properly. And in reality, the experience that senior product owners have always trumps in some way what the data says in some way. That was a big conflict, I know, and really hard. And it's partly true. that is used to try to drive an A/B test can be very wrong in many cases. But this was a big conflict. And let's say that, what do you think is wrong with that? How can we do it better? If we were to say that, okay, we want to make this change in the product. We want to make either change A or change B. We don't know which one, but we're going to find out somehow. And then you can choose to do it by having people that are experienced and know from past what works and does not, and then data that may be wrong, but at least it's in some sense objective, hopefully. But then people have such a big skepticism in some way for doing that, and it was really hard to make them accept, so to speak, the results of these tests. How should you make that transition in becoming more data-driven, more successful? We had a lot of problem with that.
And that is the same kind of challenge that we have when we start interacting with robots and whatever is not human. You had a discussion a few programs ago about doctors and AI. And we want to interact with humans, even if they are more faulty, because we trust humans.
Right. And higher trust for a sentiment coming from a human than some kind of metric from a data, right?
Yeah. And how do you then do that? So you have to recognize that is the case. Whatever comes from a computer or data driven is going to be looked at with skepticism. Right. How do we involve humans and how do we make it human? And find the individuals that others will trust to help them. I'm not exactly sure of what kind of data you're looking at, but for example, with chatbots, people don't really like that. You want to talk to somebody. But if you have a chatbot make typos, they misspell, and I mean they act more human, then people are more they want to continue the conversation. Right. And so how can you make the data more human, because that is a challenge, even if those that are born now, that are born into a digital society, our brains look for something human, and that's why we get so annoyed at computers, because we think they are human and they just don't understand us. It's like being rejected by a person, which is a horrible feeling. So